Okay, so today's lecture is going to be The Purpose of Violence by Anarchy. That's me. So let's go over the abbreviated purpose right quick. I'm going to go into a extended purpose in a little bit, but let's just get the gist right quick. So violence equals choice. The entire purpose of becoming capable of violence is to give yourself two sets of choices. Choices that weren't previously available to you before becoming capable of violence, and choices that aren't available to others who aren't capable of violence. Okay? So again, the entire point of learning violence is to give yourself these sets of choices. But even in a non-combat scenario, right? If you want to be a professional fighter or a jiu-jitsu athlete, you have to be capable of violence, right? Those qualify as choices you weren't previously capable of making before. Let's say you're in an apocalyptic scenario and there's one case of food rations left and it's you versus another family, right? Well, if you're capable of violence, you now have a new choice to acquire that food that you didn't have before, right? If you're not capable of violence, let's say the other family isn't, they're dependent on you showing them mercy, or they're going to have to trick you or reason with you, right? But again, these are all things that require them to be dependent on your kind of either mental shortcomings or your kindness or your mercy. Where if you're capable of violence, you can just take the food and you don't have to, be subject to the other person's influence. So again, that's a major choice you are now capable of that you weren't before learning violence. Okay, now let's get into the extended purpose and add some more steps so that the simplicity of violence equals choice can really be broken down into deeper principles. Okay, so violence equals power. Violence is the only ability that gives an entity the ability to enact their will independently. Every other method requires the mercy or cooperation of other entities. Okay? So lots of big words here and a pretty obvious typo, but let's go ahead and break this down. So again, if your entity, you or a clan or a tribe or something, if you want something, let's say you want to take this plot of land and build a farm, right? Violence is the only ability that allows you to get that land and farm it without being at the mercy or cooperations of other entities. Now let's break down what I include in mercy, right? Let's say you want to take that plot of land. Let's say you're not capable of violence, but there's other tribes in the region who are, but they allow you, right? They don't challenge you for that land. You just take the land and they don't challenge you for it. That counts as mercy, right? Even though they don't want the land, if they ever decided that they do want the land, it's theirs. They can just take it whenever they feel like it, right? And then you have to bargain with them, beg, trade, compromise, show tribute, give them a percentage, whatever other political wheeling and dealings you have to do, you're subject to that if you can't fight for it outright. Or again, if you're capable of violence and you want that plot of land, it will be your plot of land, right? The other entities are dependent on coming to a deal with you, and showing you tribute and depending on your mercy. Right? If you're capable of violence, we're more capable than they are. And then power increases control. Now that word increases is going to be very key here, and I'm going to explain it in a second. No entity can have complete control over their existence, but can have political control over their environment. Okay? So when I talk about, right, increases control, nobody has complete control, right? No amount of strength or violence capability is going to stop, a meteor that's going to fall and destroy the planet. Or no combat skills are going to protect you from cancer, or stop drunk drivings or lightning striking you, right? So your total mortality is not completely in your hands. Even, with genetics, right? There's a lot of factors of your environment that you just have no control over. And if luck isn't on your side that day, or fate, or God, whatever you want to call it, your ticket gets punched. Okay, but when I talk about political control, I mean person to person, right? If I'm walking down the street and somebody wants something that I have, and I'm capable of violence, right? I have more political control over that situation. I can control the outcome of a combat exchange if I train and take it seriously. Okay, so again, right? You can have political control, but you can't have complete control. The power to eliminate other entities from said environment is the ultimate form of political control, right? I'm going to get into some other forms of political control here in a minute, but this is the ultimate one, right? You can wheel and deal and compromise and all that, but the ultimate form of political controls is, okay, I can just remove you from the environment. You want that plot of land that I want? Well, now you don't exist anymore, so there's nothing in the way of me having that plot of land. And then control gives you freedom. Having ultimate control, violence, or other forms of control, resource control, public opinion, etc., gives an entity more freedom to operate as they see fit within any given environment. So again, I talk about, right, being able to remove other entities from the environment is the ultimate form of control. But again, resource control, public opinion, right? So resource control, I run the farm or the water collection, purifier, or the power plant, right? And I provide resources to everybody else, right? If you fuck with me, I can just cut off your resources. Or again, public opinion. I'm a news anchor, or I'm just some popular guy to where the public hinges on my words. If I point to somebody and say they're a piece of shit, the public will turn on them, or vice versa. If I tell the public, oh, this guy's not a piece of shit, he's our ally, they'll believe me, right? And I'm sure there's some other forms of political control that you geniuses on YouTube can think of that I wasn't able to think of, right? But my focus is on the ultimate form of control, because again, if I control the resources but I don't have a standing militia, the violent people can just steal my resources and seize my resources. Or again, right, if I'm out here speaking bad and turning the public against you, you can slip a cyanide pill into my coffee and, now I'm silenced. I can't influence public opinion anymore. Okay, so again, this gives you more freedom to operate as you see fit, right? If you want to walk around butt naked and nobody wants to see it, again, if you're in control of the most powerful militia force or you're the best fighter, who the fuck is going to stop you, right? Or same thing, right? If I control the resources of the public opinion and you shit on me for walking around naked, I hop on the internet, now you're canceled. Or, okay, well, you don't get to eat anymore. You don't get to drink water anymore, right? And again, we see that with our politicians, right? In most countries in the world, politicians write laws, but then they're not subject to those laws, right? Well, because they're in charge of the military and the police. So who the fuck is going to stop them from breaking their own laws, right? They can be above the law and they get more freedom to operate as they see fit because they have that resource control and violence and public opinion on their side. They have more control, so they have more freedom. Important key here, remember, without control, an entity can only have privilege, not freedom. Okay, so this is a very important one. Let's say eating ice cream or walking in the park, right? Being able to walk in the park without having to show papers. That is a liberty, okay? If you are capable of violence, that's a freedom, right? If the government decides you have to show papers now and you have the power to fight them, to destroy them, it's a freedom that you can fight for and you can defend, right? You're not dependent on their mercy to be able to walk in the park without papers. But if you can't fight and you're not capable of violence or you don't have any forms of control, then it's a privilege that can be revoked from you at any given time. And the only choice you have at that point, right, going back to the original purpose of violence, is to comply or die, right? Either you comply and show your papers or, the government uses violence and you're thrown in a cage or you're killed. And basically your only real option is to comply at that point. But if you have control or you're capable of violence, then that becomes a freedom. You have the power to fight back and defend that liberty. So again, a very important distinction is that a liberty at the hands of mercy, if you can't fight for it, is a privilege. It can be revoked at any time whenever the entity showing you mercy decides it to be so. But if you're capable of fighting for that liberty, it's a freedom, and you are not dependent on anybody's mercy to enjoy it. And then finally, we get into freedom gives you choice. Choice is the practice to freedom's principle. The more freedom an entity has, the more choices they have available to them to make, okay? So again, right, we talk about the principle of freedom. I have the freedom to be on camera preaching about religion or whatever I want to preach about, but I'm not exercising that freedom I have it, but I'm not actively doing it, right? But I'm choosing to speak about what I'm speaking about now. So again, choice is the practice of freedom, right? Freedom is you have the power to do this, but choice is I'm actually doing it, okay? And then we get into the last part of the extended purpose, and this is just going to be kind of, I don't want to say a mantra to be corny, but just kind of a little bit of a mantra or some tenets to kind of put the whole theory together. So the extended purpose of violence goes as follows. Violence gives you power, power increases control, control gives you freedom, and freedom gives you choice. Okay? So again, just a little kind of saying to remember to kind of break down why you're training violence, why you're becoming good, skilled at violence, or ultimately why you're using violence. It all breaks down and ends in you having a choice. Okay, now to simplify that even more, violence gives us the freedom and power to have control over our choice. Again, just a simple little sentence to remember why you're training violence or using violence or why violence is important. Okay, so what's the conclusion in all of this? Make being capable of violence a priority so that you can be the one to choose your own priorities and have the power to stop others from choosing your priorities for you. Okay? Again, if we go back to this mantra right quick, pretty much the same thing I'm saying here, right? But I'm just breaking it down even more because the problem with most societies is that civilians being capable, or just people in general, as a larger population, right? Obviously they want a small group of military and police officers to be capable of violence, but they want everybody else to be harmless and docile, right? And so they make training violence a low priority, right? Like if you look in the room right now, it's mostly empty because most people don't take knowing about violence or training violence very seriously because the environment they're in has dictated that that's a low priority. You need to be working or warshipping or, serving, in the military or jury duty or whatever, raising a family, whatever other priorities they put ahead of it, most people comply, right? But again, if you're not capable of violence, that's why you're in this rat race of other people's priorities, because you don't have the power to create your own priorities. You either follow the priorities that are imposed on you, or you suffer the consequences. Where if you're capable of violence, if you make violence your top priority, then you have the power to set your own priorities, right? If somebody else says, no, you need to be doing this instead, if you're capable of violence, you have the power to tell them to go fuck themselves, or get fucking blasted, right? And so it's the irony is, again, people don't like having other priorities imposed on them, but since you can't fight, you follow those other priorities, which tell you not to fight, and so you never take the time to learn to fight, which would allow you to control your own priorities and set them yourselves so you wouldn't have to kneel to this priority system you're stuck in, right? So this is the way out. If you can fight, you have a paramilitary force, you have the power to make your own choices and truly live the life you want to live, not just pick from a pre-made set of choices that the powers that be allow you to choose from. Being capable of violence actually truly lets you blaze your own path in life and truly live the existence you want to live. And that is all.